This is Radio Paul, and today I have two topics I would like to discuss. First, there are no pictures, however, I do think you're going to enjoy the show. The first is to cover the interview that was done, I believe it's called Coast to Coast AM, that was done with Mark Headley. And I found it very interesting that a former employer of his at Golden Era Productions called in to attack Mark, to handle Mark. One of the things that I believe Mark may have overlooked during this interview and the attack against him, actually, there are two things that I think he overlooked that certainly stand out to me, showing that this person called in uh, under orders from Scientology. The first is that Mark is declared a suppressive person. Being a suppressive person, a Scientologist cannot talk to Mark out of risk of being declared a suppressive person themselves. The only one that would call in to attack Mark would be someone who was being directed to do so by Scientology. Also, Mark, I believe Golden Era Productions, and I could be wrong here, is the one that has the spikes facing inward. That's a small technical issue. However, if you're listening for your future interviews, I know there's the bob wire on the top, and the Scientologists like to argue that it's there to keep people from climbing over the fence to steal their precious equipment. Well, would you not put the spikes on the outside? Obviously, you would, but that's not what's going on at Golden Era Productions. And I know Mark knows that. I just didn't hear him mention it. Thought I would bring it up. I mean, unfortunately, when you're defending yourself against a cult that has so many oppressive facets, it's kind of hard to remember everything. But I did want to point out that, yes, Mark was under attack from that individual. That was not just a random phone call. That wasn't somebody calling in just to share their point of view. It was a calculated phone call. And we know that from the history of how Scientology handles these types of situations. But within their own seeds that they've sown, it should never have taken place because this person should have known that Mark was a suppressive person, should not have called him and had a conversation with him. But that would be an indicator that it was in fact ordained, if not ordered, by the cult. On to our second bit of news. Scientology has been slammed in Australia by one of its members of parliament, and the only thing I can say is that this is anonymous at work. Yes, this would never have taken place if it wasn't for all the protesting out in the streets, if it wasn't for all the people leaving Scientology and knowing it was safe and it's okay to leave Scientology. This would not have happened if people were not speaking out, if people were not telling their stories like Nancy Many and Tori Christian and Mark Headley and everybody else who's speaking out. And it's because people care and because people are in the streets. And the more we are out there, the more we speak on the internet, the more people feel safe. I went to that Scientology protest in New York City last weekend, and I actually met a very nice young woman who told me that she was in that very org, I believe about a year before, and she used to hate, not she would hate, but the Scientologists would hate the disruption of the protesters in the streets. And she became aware that there was dissent against what she was being taught. And she had the mind enough to find out what that dissent was about. Mark Headley talks in one of his interviews about just hearing on a radio that Tom Cruise was being made fun of, and there was no consequences for the two radio show hosts who were talking negatively about him. That is so powerful. You know, we are literally making a movement that is changing this organization that does not want to change. We are literally confronting and shattering them. They're running and hiding behind curtains and behind plants. And, I look at the lawsuits in France, I look at the challenges in Russia, I look at the struggles here in the United States, I look at what's going on in Australia, and it's because people are becoming empowered, they're losing their fear, and Anonymous, that's due to you. It's due to the individual courage of each one of those individuals, but you've made it safe for them to speak out. And I salute you, and I will be at more protests, and I'm committing to doing more videos. So keep up the great work. It is paying off. Bless you all.